I've got a really good one in store for you today. So, I'm going to be talking about how to manage overwhelm and procrastination and the secret to getting more done in less time, and also some ADHD friendly ways to get out of that freeze, procrastination, dorsal state in our nervous system with some helpful tools that you can action straight away, and also what you can do when you forget those tools. Thank you for tuning in to the Calm Your Nervous System podcast, where you will learn to regulate your nervous system, not just calm it. I'm your host, Jenny Adams, and I'm a somatic coach who has recovered from debilitating ME and trauma. Alongside my guest experts, I'm here to share tips, stories, and debunk jargon, what is somatics anyway, about how you can regulate your nervous system so you don't have to live with chronic illness, burnout, or debilitating trauma for the rest of your life. A joyful life is possible. I'm going to answer some of your questions in this episode, and there is definitely a theme to these. And the theme is around overwhelm, and overwhelm is a word that I hear a lot, whether it comes out of my own mouth because I'm feeling overwhelmed, whether it's from friends, whether it's from clients. We just generally live in quite an overwhelming society. So what can we actually do about that? So the first question that I have got is, do you have any foolproof hacks for procrastination / freeze mode? So I'm going to answer those in two separate ways. So first of all, let's look at procrastination. What is procrastination? Where does it come from? Generally, it is when something feels too big, too boring, too much in some capacity that we can't do the thing. We don't have the skills, we don't have the tools, we don't have the support, and therefore we will just pick up our phones and go on Instagram. We will sit and fiddle with something. We will find anything to do. I used to what I used to do in my old job was I would actually get so much of my own work done when I was supposed to be doing other things. So, that it can be a form of kind of positive procrastination, but I'm not actually doing what I intended to do. But some of you, especially those ADHDers out there, might actually be able to recognize when we get a lot of stuff done when we're supposed to be doing other things. So first of all, if you notice that you are procrastinating, well done for noticing that. First of all, are you overwhelmed? Does that procrastination come because you are just feeling overwhelmed? You do not know where to start, you don't have the resources. And what actually is overwhelm? Overwhelm is when we perceive that something is just too much. So we don't have the resource to manage whatever the task may be, whatever the thing is being asked of us. So that overwhelm can come from feeling like we don't have the right support, we don't have enough money, we don't have enough time, we don't have enough capacity, we don't have enough of something. And then we get stuck in this place of lack, which is a dysregulating place for our nervous system. It can put us into that fight, flight, sympathetic, or our dorsal freeze state. And are we going to be acting in our best interests from those places, or are we going to be acting from a place of survival? It is the latter. So if we are noticing we are in that overwhelm, we are in that procrastination, first thing to ask is, what do you need? If you are aware that you are overwhelmed because you have too much on your plate, okay, there's the realization here that there's too much to do, which might sound quite common for a lot of us. And rather than tackling, especially a neurotypical viewpoint of this might be, okay, let's break this down. Let's look at how we can chunk this up. And yes, that can be helpful. But before we go there, what's actually going on in our body? So if you notice that your to-do list feels just too big, or something else that might feel overwhelming just feels too much, pause, check in with yourself. Is there anything you need? Does that to-do list look too big because you didn't sleep very well last night and you're actually really tired And all your body is screaming for right now is for you to leave work, go home and have a bath and go to bed early. And if that is possible, can you go and do that? If that's not possible, can you take a breather for a couple of minutes? This is a good time to then pick up one of the regulation tools. Once you've had that pause, so you've recognized what's going on, you've taken the pause, you've picked up a regulation tool. And actually, Tara Brach has a really good acronym to look at things like this. It's around emotion, but I really like this for overwhelm, and it's called the RAIN principle. So I'm just going to read these out to you. And this is where we recognize what's going on. Okay, I'm overwhelmed. We allow the experience to be there just as it is. Okay, I'm overwhelmed. What's going on? What do I notice? Maybe your heart rate's increased. Maybe there's a knot in your stomach. Maybe your palms are sweating. Maybe you suddenly become aware that you actually are really hungry or you desperately need to pee. So just allowing it to be there. We don't have to change anything. Not quite yet. Then we can look and investigate with interest and care. So again, we're noticing what's actually going on here. We're not trying to change anything. We're not telling ourselves we're wrong or judging ourselves or we should be doing this, we should be doing that. We're just getting curious. And curiosity is a part of our ventral nervous system. So that is where we are top of our polyvagal ladder. That is where we are in our social connected place because we are open to be curious. And then the final one is N, and that is nurture with self-compassion. So the nurturing this is where we can bring those nervous system tools in. So once we've gone through those and we've realized, okay, what's actually going on here? That nurturing, it might be, okay, I need to go pee. I'm going to go to the toilet. It could be, I need to go and eat something. It could just be literally stepping away from your computer if you're in work, taking yourself out of the situation and just taking a couple of breaths. Because often changing our environment, and it doesn't have to be, you need to move house or anything crazy like that. If you're in a situation that feels overwhelming, just get up and go to the toilet. Just literally change your environment. Walk outside if you can. Go into a different room. Anything to just interrupt that current situation, change what's going on. Okay, and then you can come back to it with a little bit more clarity. This is also a great time to pick up those tools. So if you realize that overwhelm's actually really pissing you off, can you, stomp your feet on the floor, get some of that anger out, listen to some music. Maybe you are just feeling just really exhausted. So therefore, can you maybe put on a yoga nidra, do a meditation, something that can just help things settle a little bit. And then we can get into what to do about this. So if you've recognized there's a lack of resource, okay, what is that lack of resource? Who is in your support network? Is there anybody you can reach out and ask for a little bit of support? And one thing I heard recently, and I think this was Steve Jobs that said this, I think, and he said when he was setting up Apple, all he would do was just go to people and ask if they could help him. And he said, I think 99% of the time, if not every time, when you ask somebody to help you, they are pretty much always going to say, yes, how can I help you? So, and there'll be something in here, if you are one of those people that's like, oh, but I can't ask for help, I don't deserve it. And that can be a whole other podcast episode. But is it literally, can someone help me go through this to-do list? Because everything right now feels like a priority. Can you help me organize something? Can you remind me to actually go to bed early tonight? Because right now I feel tired and I don't want to go home and then realize it's 11 or 12 o'clock before I'm actually wanting to go to bed. So what kind of support can you ask for? And that's also on somebody else and their boundaries to check in with themselves and agree or disagree. Can they offer you the support that you need? Yes or no? That is on them. So when we're also looking through that, maybe it's the to-do list that feels overwhelming. Is there any perfectionism coming up here as well? Because one of the things that can often feel overwhelming is us telling ourselves that we can only finish something, or we can only start something if we do it perfectly. And if we can't do it perfectly, don't bother. And if there's a whole load of stuff that we are looking at with that mindset, that's going to feel pretty overwhelming. It's going to feel like a lot. So maybe have a look and see, is there anything in here that can be done imperfectly? How would it be to just try doing things a little bit differently? What would actually happen if, God forbid, you made a mistake? And it doesn't mean that your work is going to suddenly turn into an absolute shit show, or you're suddenly going to become really unreliable and, terrible at what you do and all of that. No, not at all. So I might have mentioned this in the podcast before, but one thing that me and my other half have been navigating over the last year or so, one of these very common ADHD tasks that I'm sure some of you will recognise is doing the washing. So I would put the washing in. If it's not in front of me, I would then forget about it. And then it wouldn't always go into the tumble dryer, or if it would then get forgotten about again. By the time I've walked past it, generally it's because I'm going to open the back door or I'm going to feed the cat. I'm doing something else and I've gone, oh shit, tumble dryer needs emptying. And rather than taking everything out one thing at a time and folding it all, I will just take the whole lot out, shove it in the washing basket, take it upstairs and do that later, fold it later. And one of the things that was a barrier for me that he would often say is, if you're going to take it out the tumble dryer, Jen, can you fold it when you do it? And I said, no, because it's too big of a barrier for me. If you desperately want it folded out of the tumble dryer, then you can do it yourself. It's done, but it is better than perfect. Your t-shirts might have a couple of creases in, but at least they are washed and dry and not still sitting in the tumble dryer. So is there anything in your life that you could look at with the same kind of approach? Well, does it need to be done perfectly? Maybe if that was a shirt that he was wearing on Christmas Day or to a wedding or something like that. Okay, all right, maybe I'll make a bit more effort if he asks and if I have capacity. General washing, nah, it really doesn't matter. And if you want to hear a little bit more about perfectionism, I actually recorded a whole unedited, perfectly imperfect episode of the Long COVID podcast with Jackie a few months ago. So we'll drop the episode in the show notes below if you want to go and have a listen to that. Really interesting how many of us get tripped up with perfectionism and kind of what's behind that, what's running it. So hopefully that's giving you a bit of an idea on the overwhelm and the procrastination, because when something feels too big, we don't have the resource or support, or we perceive that we don't, that is often when we will then go into avoidance of some kind. We will pick up our phones, we will go and do something else. So notice what your triggers are for procrastination. And I notice this more and more. If a task feels too big, if it feels boring, if it feels too difficult, I will get to a certain point in that and I'm like, I want to go off somewhere else. And I can see myself wanting to pick my phone up or wanting to open up another tab, or an idea pops into my head. And that is the moment where that overwhelm is just very slightly creeping in. And I want to avoid feeling like I can't handle something, as I'm sure some of you will resonate with that as well. So when you're in that, again, find those tools. What is it you need? And sometimes it can just be a breath and then coming back to it. I can do this. I can do hard things. And you don't have to do it all at once either. So the second part of that question was looking at the freeze response and how to kind of get out of the freeze response, what happens when we're in that shutdown place, and again, how to get out of it. So we can use that RAIN principle, the recognize, allow, investigate, nurture. Finding that awareness, just notice, oh, okay, right now I'm in a freeze response. And the fact that you are asking that question and you're noticing that you're in a freeze response, again, well done. Well done for noticing that. So if you want to know a little bit more about the nervous system and polyvagal theory, if some of this is not making sense to you, go back and listen to episode 3 of this podcast, where I go into the different steps and stages in a lot more detail. And the nervous system is something every single human mammal has on this planet. So this is not just for people who are neurodivergent or have a chronic illness, or whoever you are might be listening to this. This is for everybody. So when we're talking about the freeze response, that is the lowest part of our autonomic nervous response, the dorsal response. That is the freeze, the shutdown, and that could be in an extreme. So it can be you are not capable of literally doing anything. You might just notice, one thing I do is my eyes will just kind of glaze over and I'll just get a bit starey and my mind goes a bit blank. And if you're watching, you might have just seen that. So that's kind of one place I will go, and I'll either daydream or my mind is just like nothing because I'm in that shutdown response. Or it can feel quite shrinky, like you are just trying to make yourself very small. Your voice gets really quiet and your breathing slows. And, if you imagine this is a survival response, something's chasing you maybe, you want to get as small and as quiet as possible if you cannot run away from that threat or fight it anymore, which is why this is the bottom part of our nervous system. This can be triggered by all sorts of things. And if you go here, this is also normal. We jump through these different states a lot of the time. The intention of the work I do, the support that I give people, is not to have a nervous system when we are always in ventral. It's to have a flexible nervous system so we can go through those different states easily and as quickly as possible, ideally, because it's not nice to be stuck in that freeze response for a long time. So when we are there and we have recognized that we are there, what we need to do is go back up to that sympathetic before we can go to ventral. So a couple of tools that can be helpful when we notice that we're in that freeze response. Again, take the pause, notice what's going on, and then just start to become aware that you have a body. I know it can sound really simple, but if you're stuck in your head, okay, can I feel my hands? Can I feel my feet on the floor? Can I feel my breath? Go through your senses. What can you hear? What can you taste? What can you smell? What can you see? What can you feel? And it can literally be, the feeling of your clothing. It can be your jewellery. It can be your hair. It can be your feet in shoes. Anything that you can feel. And it's almost like you're defrosting yourself then, starting to be aware that, I'm a human and I feel. There are feelings here. Grounding, again, just noticing like your sit bones, your feet on the floor. Orienting yourself to your environment, because when we're in that freeze response, our vision can shut down. We can get quite tunnel vision, quite small. So if it feels safe to just gently start opening yourself up to your surroundings. And only you can judge how much of this and at what pace you do this. This isn't, okay, you're literally in a ball in the corner and then you're jumping up in the air, opening everything up, looking everywhere. It is probably too much. It's that gentle unfurling of yourself, opening up, expanding your capacity again. So orienting yourself to your surroundings. Again, noticing what can you hear in your environment? What can you see around you? Noticing anything that is in your immediate surroundings that feels interesting, curious, or there's a nice little emotional pull, something that just feels like, okay, I want to look at that. So behind my desk here, I have photos and I have thank you cards from clients. And I got given a gift today, which is a positive potato, which is a little, actually, I'm going to show it for those of you watching on YouTube. Let me get my little positive potato. I may be a tiny potato, but I believe in you. Go do your thing. Don't know if the lighting is too bright here, but there's my little positive potato. How cute. So, little things like that can be an anchor. Great. And then once you are starting to feel a little bit of a shift, a little bit more okay, we're not necessarily saying full on safe yet, can you bring in just a little bit of gentle movement? And when I say gentle movement, I literally mean maybe just gently swaying on the spot. Maybe it's just giving yourself a little hug. It could be just rocking your feet up and down. Just anything that feels intuitive here. There's no right or wrong to this. So if your body's asking you to do something weird, it might be some weird stretch or who knows. But just listen to whatever it is that your body is saying, oh, I need this right now. And please be kind to yourself throughout this. This is a normal human response. And the more you can catch yourself in this, find that compassion towards yourself and pick up these tools to actually help you move through this, the more automatic, the more routine these are going to be, that when you go into that freeze response, for example, you're not then stuck there forever, because our minds can be real dicks when we're in this place and tell us that, there's no hope and there's nothing we can do and we might as well give up and all that crap that is not very nice. When we can go, oh, hang on, I'm just in a dorsal response, it just gives you a little bit of space from believing those thoughts, because that is just what the mind is tuned to do, is to just constantly think. And that's what it's doing. But when we're in that state, it doesn't tell us very nice things. So notice that dorsal response. Okay, I'm dysregulated. What do I need? What do I need? And this actually goes on, nicely to the next question, which is how to incorporate tools, brain retraining, taking a pause, etc., when you forget or you feel like you never get anything done because it takes you so long to sit down and focus, and then you have to stop what you're doing to regulate. I get so much resistant to using any tools because I procrastinate so much. Okay, so I'm going to answer these again in chunks. So, how do we incorporate these tools when we forget? If you are an ADHDer, you might have this thing called object permanence. So if you imagine when you're a baby, or if you're ever around babies and you play peekaboo, like you put your hands over your face and then you open them again. And babies have this thing, like as soon as something's not there, it doesn't exist. So if you put your hands over your face, you as a person, you've gone. You disappeared. You no longer exist. Now our adult minds know, well, there's a person behind that. You've just got your hands up. ADHD can be a little bit similar. So, hence why me saying about my washing, once I put the washing in the washing machine and I walk away from it, it no longer exists. It's only when I go back and walk past it, I go, oh shit, okay, there's the washing. So, if you were anything like that and you need visual reminders, how can you use those visual reminders? So, what can you put in your environment that reminds you of maybe things that you need to do? Having something like a toolkit in front of you. So a list of your basic functions, your basic needs, a couple of tools that you know that work well for you to shift states. Maybe it's a few people that you can reach out to if you are struggling or need some support. Maybe it's a list of achievements that you've had this year or personal growth. Just a few reminders that when you are down in that frozen procrastinating state and just everything feels like shit, you can look at something and just interrupt that pattern of, okay, hang on. Maybe if I just go outside and go for a walk and ring a friend, I'll feel a lot better. But when we're in that, our brain will quite often just be going, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. Oh my God, where do I start? What can I do about this? I don't know what to do. No one's there for me. And we get stuck there and it doesn't help. So having like a toolkit on your phone, if you've got a notes app on your phone, it can be like an SOS titled note. Again, just have some wins on there, have some stuff that might cheer you up. have some reminders of tools that you can use, support you can reach out for, podcasts to come and listen to as well, because if you are feeling overwhelmed, come and listen to this one again. So just anything that can help prompt you to kind of get out of that place, and especially if you're forgetting. And then, is there anything else? And this can kind of be dependent on how you learn as a person, how you best process. Some people process best by hearing things, some by seeing things, some by doing. There are various different ways that we learn. So other ways that we can help with this, okay, I've forgotten, is your generic stuff. Like, does setting a reminder on your phone work? Maybe something like the Pomodoro technique. And so for me, for reminders, if I put a reminder on my phone, it pops up and I ignore it. If I set a timer, which has an alarm on it, I hear that and I will respond to that better than just a thing that flags up, because I'll just go, no, go away. So what I will often do is tell my AI thing in my phone, I'm not going to say it because it will set it off, set a timer for 20 minutes. And that will give me 20 minutes to go through my emails, for example, before I then realise I've been sat looking at them for 2 hours. That's a little prompt. So that's the Pomodoro technique. And there are various different timers, apps, all sorts for that. And yeah, so if that's something that might work for you, great. Again, if it's something visual, is it being in a space where you can body double and you can say to somebody, can you remind me in 20 minutes to get up and stretch? And again, that's on them if they can manage that boundary or not. Or can you help, shall we both say we're going to work for X amount of time and then we're both going to take a break, we're going to go get a cup of tea, we are going to have a stretch, whatever it might be. But having someone there with you for that accountability. So just asking yourself, okay, what does actually work for me? How do I work best? And this is something that I go into in a lot more depth when I'm working with people, either one-to-one or in a group coaching container, is looking at how do we support ourselves in maybe the workplace, maybe home life, and yeah, just understanding you don't need to fit into a box just because this one tool might work for somebody, and maybe it's somebody with ADHD, doesn't necessarily mean it will work for you. So please see these as, a chocolate box. Pick the ones you like, leave the ones you don't. I'm just offering some suggestions here. And then the second part of this question is about feeling like you never get anything done because it takes you so long to sit down and focus. And then you have to stop what you're doing to regulate. I get so much resistance to using tools because I procrastinate so much. So especially something around this sitting down to focus and then you have to stop to regulate. I'm going to reframe this. So, how would it be to regulate first and then go into work? Because if we're starting working from a dysregulated place, our prefrontal cortex isn't on, our executive functioning isn't working very well. And also, depending on what you do, and this doesn't just have to be work, but this could be any task you are putting your effort into, what kind of energy are you bringing to that? Do you want that done in that rushed, hectic energy? And also, how long does it take you to get something done when you're coming at something from that kind of perspective? Does it actually take you longer because you keep going off in every different direction? It's really hard to concentrate. You're not in your flow. I'm sure we've all been there where you've opened a blank piece of paper and you're like, right, I have to write an email or a website page or a report or something, and your mind is just blank. I just can't. And if you're anything like me, it will come when you're in the shower, you're driving, you're out for a walk, and you're actually taking that moment to stop and slow down, and then the inspiration comes. So when do you work best in flow? How do you get into your flow? And also notice that we are cyclical beings, especially for anyone who identifies as female and has a cycle. So certain times of the month, we're just not going to be wanting to do so much. And also certain times of the year. So the day I'm recording this podcast, tomorrow is the longest day of the year. It's the winter solstice. We're not really supposed to be functioning at our best right now. We are supposed to be hibernating. This is a time of the year to, go inwards, to rest, to look after ourselves. It's not going to be where we are producing our highest and our most amount of work. So as humans, why are we putting so much pressure on ourselves? We're not standing outside shouting at the trees because they don't have any leaves on them right now. So why do we do the same thing to ourselves? So yeah, noticing when are you best in flow? When is that in your cycle? When is that maybe in your day? What do you need to get into that place? There's some things to think about in there. And when you are sitting down and looking at your focus, are you going through that to-do list and just going, or maybe just opening your inbox and going, oh my God, where do I start? And you just start with the top and you work your way down. And this is one thing I've been very conscious of doing this week, because I've been in Canada and America for the last 3 weeks. So I've not really been checking in with my emails that much. It's the week before Christmas when I record this as well. So I've had 1 week of work and there's been a lot. And also whilst I've been away, there's been a few issues that have come up that I've had to manage when I've come back this week. So on top of a normal working week, there's some problems to solve. There's been some issues, which has felt quite overwhelming. And what I have done is said, what is my priority? What do I need? I need to look after myself physically first. So I went to Pilates on Monday. I saw my personal trainer on Tuesday. I had a massage, saw my soft tissue therapist on Thursday. Today is Friday. I've been going to bed early. I've been having baths. So I've really been looking after me and my needs first, even though my to-do list is huge. And then I have been asking myself, okay, what's my priority? I need to do this task. Someone else might be screaming at me going, you need to do this, and why has this not been done yet? But my priority, I really wanted to write some really good emails to some specific people. So I have sat down and focused on doing those, because otherwise if I'm answering my inbox every time an email comes in, I won't have that dedicated time to actually go through that email and write down what I want and have that space for the ideas to come, for, the pauses, the thinking. So, turning off all my notifications. I've basically just told everybody on WhatsApp I'm ignoring everybody. So I will get back to you when I feel a bit better and there's less on my plate. So what is your priority? And I hope, first of all, it's you. And then second of all, then look at, maybe it's your list. Maybe it's your personal to-do list. And then maybe set an hour aside in your day, if you have it, to then say, right, well, this is kind of like my faffing hour. That's the time to look at your sand. So if you've got my life alignment map, I go through an exercise on there, your rocks, pebbles, and sand. Your sand is just all the stuff that fits in around things. It's your answering emails. It's the bits and pieces. It's not the big important stuff. So, you can set an hour aside to do those sandy tasks. Might be doing a little bit of cleaning or whatever it might be to you. Go through the bits and pieces, set yourself that time, and then, right, done. Because if you are constantly reacting as opposed to responding, you're going to just be coming from that reactive place, which is that sympathetic fight-flight in your nervous system. What's the intention behind that? What's the energy behind that? Are you at your best then? Or do you just feel like you're frantically chasing your tail and you're frazzled? So let's find that regulation first. And please don't forget about the power of the pause. If you're noticing something is starting to creep up on you and just feel a bit too big, just pausing, just taking a moment, take a breath, notice your sit bones, notice your feet, literally a moment. You don't have to take yourself anywhere. You don't have to pick any tools up. Just pause before you're jumping between stuff or whenever you feel overwhelmed. And I will also say around the flow state. So the state of flow is when you're getting these ideas coming to you, you're giving yourself the space to create. It's slightly different from hyperfocus. So hyperfocus can come from that place of, I don't have enough time. I'm in my flow right now. And if I get interrupted, that is when, again, we're in the lack mentality. If I get interrupted right now, therefore, I'm never going to be able to get this back. So I have to do it all now. And I have to cram all this work in to however many hours. And we know it's hyperfocus because we haven't moved for however many hours. We haven't checked in with our body. So we're not responding to those signals of hunger, needing the toilet, discomfort, temperature. And, I speak from experience here. I've had many of those times where I am glued to my chair, hyper-focusing an email out, and, I'm actually really cold and I'm desperate for the toilet, and I stand up and I'm like, oh my God, I really need to pee and I'm really hungry and I need to jump up. So there's a difference there, because hyperfocus can just be dysregulation. And actually, I'm going to talk about the prefrontal cortex and executive functioning and how this can respond, how this has its place, because you probably hear me talking about regulation. Okay, why is it actually important to regulate, especially when we have ADHD? So the prefrontal cortex is like the front part of your brain, and essentially one of its functions is executive functioning. And if you're not sure what that is, I'm going to go into some of the things around executive functioning. And as I do this, just notice if there's any of these that you think, yeah, that's something I might struggle with a little bit, or I would prefer to be stronger in this place. So executive functioning is things like impulse control, organization, working memory. So can we keep information in mind and actually be able to pull it out and use it? So, for example, I need to go onto Instagram to message this person, and then we go to Instagram and we get distracted by all the other things. Have we got the working memory to go, I'm on Instagram because I need to speak to this person? Or have we just got lost in Instagram, for example? Planning and prioritization. So again, looking at that toolkit, we're looking at the list of your stuff that you need to do and going through, how do I do this? Do I need to break this down into steps? Do I need to ask for help? Where do I start? And what's the priority? And again, that can be something that we can struggle with sometimes. Emotional control and regulation. So are we having those, what looks like an overreaction to things? Or are we perceiving criticism in a very harsh way? Are we finding that rejection sensitivity? How are we managing our emotions? And this doesn't mean we have to push things down, but what's a reasonable response given the situation? And, I would openly say I'm quite an emotional person. I am a lot more open with my emotions these days. So another part of executive functioning is task initiation and follow through. So again, how do we get started with this thing and how do we finish it, most importantly? Self-monitoring. So you've heard me talking about checking in with our body, noticing, okay, how am I right now? Are you sitting in a position where your leg's gone dead and you are completely unaware of that until you try and move? And then flexible thinking, so adapting our behaviour to changes. So, are we cold? Has something come in that is actually a priority that you need to act on? So if any of those you're hearing and going, oh, that explains why I struggle with certain things, and this can be for everybody, But generally, those of us that have ADHD will find executive functioning tasks, all of those behaviours that I have just mentioned, a little bit more difficult to do than a neurotypical person. And a neurotypical person can and will also struggle with those. And this goes for everybody. When we are dysregulated, that prefrontal cortex is not working as well as it could. So if you think you've got ADHD and you've got less of that of executive functioning available, and you're dysregulated, you've got even less available. So if you're desperately trying to get that email out, for example, or write that report, and you're going at it from that pushing energy, I need to do this, come on, I need to get this out, you're in that fight, flight, survival state, what is it you're actually producing? And does it work? Does it just, maybe it will work, but it takes so much longer? How is it when you take yourself away from that situation, you regulate yourself, you get that prefrontal cortex, you get all of those executive functions back online, and then you have another look at the task, whatever it is that you're looking at. So regulating before we go into a task, and this is where we will often get things mixed up, is we are trying to hit that task as hard as we can, and we'll regulate after. You know, if I just crack on with my work and get the day over as quickly as possible, it means I can relax later. But what actually happens is the day just takes longer because we're not being very productive. We're not actually getting things done. We're just taking a lot of time in that survival state, which is also not good for our body because we're just not designed to be in that survival state for a long time. So I'm hoping that is supportive, helpful in answering some of those questions. And if any of this is also sounding relevant to you, then please get in touch, because this is the work that I support people with. And I've actually got a group coaching course coming up in January. It's called Unmask and Align. And as it says, it's going to be all about unmasking, being able to be your most confident and brilliant ADHD self, and also aligning your life to your values. So you're going to be able to get things done without that last minute push and chaos that maybe you've lived with your whole life. It will be about managing your energy so you can work in flow and you can actually rest in a way that works for you in a guilt-free way. It's going to be about embracing your neurodiversity. So getting rid of some of that shame, working out what your strengths are and playing to those strengths, finding calm, that confidence and control as well, and being able to communicate your needs, even when life just feels a bit crazy. So we're going to look at how you're going to regulate your nervous system, finding that inner peace, working out what your values are and how to live by them, communicating your boundaries effectively, being seen unapologetically, being your bold, brightest self, and also setting ADHD-friendly goals that you can actually stick to and you want to work towards. It's not just bouncing all these new ideas in. There still will be that, but with a focus, with an intention. And this is going to be designed to be really a small group, so it's going to be tailored support to what you need. And we're starting in January 2025. So if you want to start your 2025 off to a calm yet manageable, successful start, then have a look at the link I've left in the show notes below, or hop over to my Instagram at Jenny Adams Coach and just DM me the word bright, and my lovely little chatbot will send you the link to join the priority list to hear more about it. So I hope you found this episode helpful. Hopefully this is helping with some of your overwhelm. I get it, you're doing a great job. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you for listening to this episode of Calm Your Nervous System. I hope you found the conversation as interesting as I did. If you would like to start healing your nervous system, I have a free energy diary available just for podcast listeners, which will really help you see your blind spots about how you're spending your time and your energy. Find it at jennyadamscoach.co.uk/podcast. Find out more about me and somatic coaching in the show notes below. See you next time.